We'd like to welcome everyone tonight for our regular City Council meeting. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer, both given by Charlene Thompson.
Please stand, put your hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father in heaven, we're so very thankful for thy many blessings, for the opportunities to listen and to pay attention to what's going on in our city. And as the City Council prepares to make decisions, that their hearts and minds may be open, that they may be able to make the good decisions that will help the whole community and that will prosper the whole city. This we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for your help with both of those things. We will now move to our public comment period. This is a time limited to 2 minutes per person, and we would love to hear from anyone who would like to speak. If you are interested in coming up, just state your name and your address, and we'd love to hear from you now.
Okay, Alex Densley for 443 Jerry Drive. Sorry, I had to sit there and think for a second. My just quick little 2-minute comment is simply on agenda item number 7. So bear with me. I tried to put my thoughts at least in an organized pattern that makes at least a little bit of sense on it. Simply, upon here looking at the agenda item and then learning further about the position open for the Planning Commission meeting, I'm a little concerned that the city's process of selecting the individual into the position. Currently, all Planning Commission members but one have a strong real estate development interest. The current Planning Commission consists of a real estate broker, a real estate lawyer, and a general contracted. If appointed, the additional member will add another very large, important part of it, being on a planning commission well, not full planning commission, but being on the planning record in Salt Lake City, Utah. I find this kind of a conflict of interest, especially where we have so many people who are already so well certified and knowledgeable in the real estate industry. Simply, I look at it as real estate developers' interests are usually short-term, and then we as the neighbors are stuck with the existing consequences of whatever goes on there. The question that I just simply pose to the council tonight is just simply, with such large real estate development interests already on the Planning Commission, one must ask, does the mayor and the city council really view local residents who do not work in real estate as an obstacle to development? Or are those who make a living in real estate really the only residents in Bountiful who have the expertise to offer on the Planning Commission? Full disclosure, I did run for Planning Commission. I'm simply requesting that my name be removed, as well as the other individual who has been suggested for the position be removed, that we may have somebody out of the other 10 who is not an expert in that area be put to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to come forward? Thank you. We will now move to consider the approval of minutes from previous meetings.
So we have several minutes to approve, I think, so that we could update the minutes on January 11th that needed an edit. So with those changes clarified, I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes for January 11th, 13th, 14th, and the 25th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We will now move to council reports, and we'll start with you, Councilwoman Price Hewish.
Thank you. I have nothing to report from the Planning Commission at this time.
Thank you. I don't have a report to share tonight, so Councilman Bell, do you have anything to report?
The Bountiful Youth Council will be soliciting youth that want to participate in the next month, and excited, and they are doing wonderful things. I'm really excited to see what they're doing and be involved.
That's a great update. It's nice to know when those applications are open, if we know people that might want to apply to be on the youth council. So thank you for letting us know.
And that'll be on the city website too, I think, at the time, as soon as those are available.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilwoman Bradshaw.
I think I had plenty of legislative updates in the work session, so I'll pass.
Thank you for that. Councilman Higginson.
Nothing this evening, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. We will move to the next item. Is there a report from the Youth Council?
There is. Noah's here for us tonight.
Welcome, Noah.
Good evening. So I am Noah Wright. I'm the city manager for the Bountiful City Youth Council. And here's an update on some stuff we've been doing. So we were able to attend the day at the legislature that the state government holds this past month, and we got to receive a tour from our representative, Todd Weiler. We also visited with Representative Ray Ward and observed both the House and Senate sessions. We then ate lunch at Joy Luck and were able to listen to and speak with City Attorney Clint Drake. We'd like to recognize that February is Black History Month, and we'd also like to recognize the important contributions that African Americans have made and continue to make to this great nation by highlighting formidable scholar Thomas Sowell, who wrote, "We enjoy freedom and the rule of law on which it depends, not because we deserve it, but because others before us put their lives on the line to defend it." Presently, we are about to begin accepting BCYC applications for the upcoming school year. We'd like to ask the City Council to please spread the word to any Bountiful students who may be interested. We are also beginning to plan our annual Bunny Hop, which will be on April 16th at the Bountiful Park. We request your support for our upcoming event, and we request the council to please let Jesse Bell know of any service opportunities we can assist with. Thank you, Mayor Harris and the Honorable City Council, and esteemed city management, and God bless America.
Thank you for that great report. Did you have a question?
I did have a question. Did I miss this? Is there a deadline for applications for BCYC?
Yes, so applications for both leadership and regular membership open on March 1st. Regular membership, I believe, that application closes March 15th, and leadership applications close April 15th, I believe. It's just a little bit longer.
Thank you. That's great. We'll be sure to spread the word.
Noah does a great job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
Okay, we will consider approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 and the financial report from December.
I move to, for the approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 paid January 10th, 17th, and 24th of 2022.
Second?
And also, would you like your motion to also include the December financial report?
I will amend my motion to also include the December 2021 financial report.
And I will include that in my second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We will now consider the approval of the appointment of Miss Chrissy Gilmore to the Bountiful City Planning Commission. Mr. Francisco Astorga.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to Jesse Bell's successful council election, it created a vacancy in the Planning Commission. His, by the way, his term was supposed to expire in July of this year. The city, we received a total of 12 individuals requesting to be considered for the Planning Commission vacancy. The code does indicate that we're supposed to have staggered terms, so this specific term, we would like it to end on July 1st, 2024. We don't have any other vacancies expiring there, and it would be ideal to have a vacancy every year, so we can not have too many changes.
So just to clarify, her term would be then 2.5 years?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And as indicated in the code, the planning commission members may be reappointed for successive terms. I remember Jim, I forgot his last name, I'm sorry.
No.
Clark was recently appointed for another 4-year term. We received 12 requests from 12 individuals, which were reviewed by myself, the city attorney, and the city engineer. This individual, Chrissy Gilmore, who is here, Chris, if you can wave, thank you. She works currently for Salt Lake City as a city planner. She's also worked for a private planning consultant. We believe that her experience and knowledge of planning will be an asset to the city, specifically as we utilize her skills regarding the upcoming general plan update. I personally do not feel that the real estate career or profession similar to planning. For example, I would not consider anyone with real estate experience if I were filling a position in my staff, which I'm currently am. Those are my personal thoughts. With that said, staff, we recommend that the mayor appoint Chrissy Gilmore to the Planning Commission. We need consent and with the consent and the advice of the City Council.
Can I ask a question? Francisco, but it could also maybe be answered by Cecily or Mayor Harris, or Jesse, since you all have got planning commission experience. What is the gender makeup of our current planning commission?
We have Sharon Spratley is the, and Cicely, I'm sorry. We have 2 women, and then the remaining 4 are men.
Okay, so with this appointment, we would
This would be
have a
3-4.
3-4 gender balance. Thank you.
Which is more than we've ever had before.
Probably.
I just want to make a comment that I'm very impressed with Chrissy's, her expertise, her experience, her skill set. I think she'll be an asset, especially as we approach the general plan. So I was really impressed with her resume when I reviewed it.
And I'm sorry, I left out one more comment. Chrissy was highly recommended before we set up the announcement by a Mr. Jesse Bell, as well as a Lynn Jacobs. They both worked with her. Lynn Jacobs is our chair of our planning commission. They both have worked with her in the past. This is as soon as Jesse learned of this, of that vacancy, he gave me Chrissy's name.
I have worked with Chrissy previously in my previous career, and I found her to be a hard worker, understands city dynamics and the issues that affect how we live, and I think she'll be a wonderful asset to our city.
Any other questions or
I've
discussion?
got one if I could.
Sure.
So Francisco, will you talk a little bit about the potential for real estate professionals to take over our planning commission, or for them to be overrepresented there? How many of our folks are real estate professionals?
We have Sharon Spratley, who is a real estate agent / broker. I did not know Sean Monson's specific legal background and his expertise. I'm looking at Clint. Perhaps he is more well-versed as far as what area of law he practices in. The other members, if I may, we have a transportation engineer. Jim, I asked him, what do I tell people? He says, I'm the old retired guy, is what he says, and he says he's a small business owner. Cecily, council member. Who am I leaving out here?
Did you mention Jim?
Alan Bott, who is a builder.
Yeah, just on Sean. Sean's, I'm actually looking at Sean's bio online right now. He's listed as an employment and labor practice area chairperson of his firm. He does practice in real estate, as many attorneys that have more than one specialty, but his main specialty is employment and labor.
What firm is he with, Clint?
He's with Parsons, Bailey, and Latimer.
So he's the chair of their practice group? I mean, that's
Yes.
one of the top 5 biggest firms in the state, so if he's chairing that practice, I would say his practice is dominated by labor and employment with
Absolutely.
with a minor interest in real estate.
Yeah, I think
with.
his real estate experience comes from his prior firm where he was doing a little bit more of that. But he's been doing employment for quite a while. I would just also note that there really aren't any qualifications to be on the planning commission other than to be a member of or a resident of the city. That's the main qualification. And then, of course, a willingness to serve. I can personally tell you that I love our planning commission. I love their depth and of knowledge and their wide area of expertise that we see time and time again that they utilize to the benefit of the city. Regarding any concerns about conflicts, first of all, it's the Planning Commission's duty to uphold our existing law, not to create or deviate from the law. You create the ordinances, they apply the ordinances. And then, of course, they can provide recommendations as well. Ultimately, any decision that is made is either delegated by you as the City Council to the Planning Commission, or you have the final say in. So as the elected officials and as the elected representatives, you provide the final say. And then finally, a little plug for our next Planning Commission meeting. I provide conflicts training and go into great detail with our members about what conflicts may arise, how they should handle those conflicts, and the way that we deal with those conflicts. So I feel very comfortable with the person that has been recommended for approval. And we felt great about a lot of the candidates, but Ms. Gilmore is certainly at the top of that list.
One warning then, if I could.
Please.
Francisco, if Ms. Gilmore is as good as people say, you better watch it.
We will.
Just saying. She's going to be watching over your shoulder.
We will.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
Thank you.
Any other discussions or questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the appointment of Chrissy Gilmore to the Bountiful Planning Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. And I just want to give Chrissy an opportunity. Would you like to just say a word or two?
Hi, thank you. I don't have much, just that I'm thrilled to serve Bountiful and be a part of Bountiful's future, and I've loved living here. I moved here with my husband. He's from Bountiful, and it's been just a pleasure. We live within walking distance of Main Street, and I'm looking forward to continuing to make the city a better place and a great place to raise my family. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to serve, and welcome to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Isn't 12 a lot of applicants?
We will move to our next item. Appointment of Councilmember Cecily Price-Hewish to the Centerpoint Control Board. Mr. Gary Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something we should have caught back when we were doing all the appointments and liaison assignments, and I apologize that we did not, but we actually have 2 appointments to be made to the Administrative Control Board, and so I understand that you have asked Cecily if she'd be willing to do that, and that I think under threat of broken kneecap, she agreed. That's what she told me. It's pretty onerous, right, Richard?
You might meet once or twice, ever.
So this is just adding that second appointment, that second person from the council to the board, and I think we'd be just looking for a motion from the council to approve the appointment.
Move to enthusiastically confirm that appointment.
Oh, I thought we were going to quiz her on her favorite, like, plays or actors first. But
Show tunes.
or show tunes, how do you feel about show tunes? But if not, we'll second.
I'd be happy to break into a show too.
I withdraw my second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for your service on that board, Cecily and Councilwoman Price Hewish. And we will move to our next item to consider adoption of Resolution 2022-02, amending the fees and charges relating to planning and development activities. Mr. Galen Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This is a bit of a follow-up item from a discussion that was held at our retreat with you just back in January on the 14th. And during that time, there was a study presented by our engineering and planning staff talking about planning and development fees in the city. And a bit of a discussion there on how fees are set and what they're for, and a study to assess that they are set at the right level. And essentially, in practice, fees and charges should be set to recover the costs of delivering the related services that are involved with those fees. And so if those costs are not recovered through an appropriate fee, then it can result in indirect subsidy from the taxpayers directly, instead of having those fees being paid by those that are receiving the services. Tonight we have our city engineer, our city planner, and our building official here that did the study and can answer specific questions if you have any. We did survey 12 cities in northern Utah to get a sense of where others were, what they were doing, what their fees were as part of that study, and then also a complete assessment of our costs involved with that. And to culminate tonight, we'd be looking for your approval for the resolution so indicated before.
Thank you. What questions or discussion does the council have?
I have a couple questions, if you don't mind, and then I
Please.
also have a report back on some research I did while I was at the state capitol today, if that's okay. So my first question is, Lloyd, it's not to put you on the hot spot, but here I go. I think probably all of us received an email from a resident that was concerned about whether we'd reach the right levels on these fees. And as I think back over the last couple agendas that we've had a number of approvals related to, and Francisco, this is your warning of the hot seat too. We've had a number of items on our agendas for the Renaissance Town Center, and the various buildings that are moving through there, different updates to their master plan and overlays there. So my question would be, how many hours do you think, just in the last 4 or 5 items that have come before us from that project, have you invested in staff time from an engineering standpoint and from a planning standpoint? And I'm asking for a rough estimate, but.
If you're not asking for a number, then my answer is lots. Lots of hours. Francisco and I have spent reviewing plans and architectural renderings and utility plans, you name it, checking plats. It's tedious, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of staff time.
Yeah, ditto.
So then my next question, Gary, sorry, this is going to be a hot seat question for you. One of the things that we hear a lot as a particular theme of this legislative session is that the state needs to provide us different solutions for different types of development, and they need to provide us a one-size-fits-all model because cities don't move fast enough for the developers. And there's anecdotal stories that are told at the state capitol that move significant pieces of legislation about mystery city X or mystery city Y. They're usually not named or outed, that sat on a permit forever, or that required multiple hoops to jump through. How do we make sure that we aren't that anecdotal story that they use to say we ought not to have this authority to shape and fit projects and provide that necessarily, check to make sure they fit, all the requirements and are done in a way that melds into what makes this a great place to live? How do we make sure that we don't become that anecdotal story?
It's funny you're asking this question, because I can give you a really good example that happened yesterday of how we don't. And the short answer is we employ the right people and we maintain good relationships with the people that do business in Bountiful. Just yesterday, we had a developer that we've done a lot of work with in Bountiful, a home builder, who had a concern about the way we do business. This person, before they called the city, sent an email to certain factions at the legislature that got sent back to us, that they were frustrated with Bountiful. And this is somebody we talk to on a regular basis, this particular developer. So our city attorney and city engineer, who have a very good relationship, we thought, with this person, just called him and said, hey, we understand that you've got a concern, and why are you sending emails? We thought we had a good relationship. In the matter of 20 minutes, half an hour, less, the issues were resolved. An apology email was sent to everybody that was sent from this person, that he has a great relationship with the Bountiful, that we're one of the good actors, was the term that was used. To me, I don't know why you're asking that question. I don't know if you heard about that through channels up at the Capitol today for some reason, but I'll tell you that it's a perfect example of how we don't become a target of any legislation, is frankly, it's the personal touch of our staff.
So what had me thinking about this list and seeking different input and advice is the common complaint I generally hear from legislators about why cities aren't moving fast enough on you name it project is that the cities can't move fast enough, they don't have enough staff, or they don't have expertise, or sometimes it's that councils don't want to do things. But to me, looking at these fees, and that this is the person who wants to move that project forward, paying a fee that enables us to have the right level of staffing to do that project and move it forward on a timely basis, so we aren't the holdup. That if there is a holdup, it's on their end. We ought to do that through the fees. Rather than on the backs of the general resident. And so if the projects are taking, expert time to accomplish, we ought to have that be the mechanism that pays for that, rather than our property tax or our sales tax, because these are specific costs incurred to a specific narrow property. And so with that worry in mind, I went and sought out the Utah Taxpayers Association and I actually asked them to look at our packet and our report and said, does the approach that has been taken here to look at our current fee, to map out the staff time required and give it a dollar value, and working for a law firm, I'm really comfortable with billing in 0.6 of an hour. And so associating an actual value of time to the report to come up with what does it cost to process the different permits, to make sure that we're providing that appropriate check and balance, moving it timely, working with whatever the project is to make sure that it blends into our city well, that they bear that cost through a fee, rather than, you know, a resident who lives really far away from that project or won't directly benefit from the commercial enterprise that they're pursuing. And so in those conversations today with the Utah Taxpayers Association, they were actually pleasantly surprised to see that we had conducted this analysis, and I asked them what their best practice guidance was on fees. And their feedback was that where there is a specific use, tying it directly to a fee was their guidance. And so for me, that provided great comfort that the process we went through in reviewing this at the Planning Commission, or at the planning retreat, this is how we make sure that we can provide that robust level of responsiveness to those that are doing projects in our city, while at the same time assuring our residents that these projects meet all of the requirements that are incumbent upon us to make sure that they're done in the right way, that we've thoughtfully considered building codes, traffic requirements, all of those things. So I offer that long-winded feedback from my self-imposed homework assignment today to check in with the Taxpayers Association.
Thank you for that. What other comments or questions?
Richard.
No,
Okay.
after you.
Thank you for your perspective and for doing that kind of deep dive with the Taxpayer Association. I think that's helpful information. I do think in reviewing this, when our main justification is to indirectly subsidize costs, I think that there are many departments in the city that could be characterized as subsidizing costs for high users or high utilizers. And so for me, that was not as powerful of an argument, because I think we could point to many areas in the city. However, what I'm concerned about is that there may be some unintended consequences, or maybe intended consequences, and I understand that having a professional department in the city, you know, is, to me, part of the cost of municipal governance. And so, you know, when we do look at the information, I believe that Galen gathered about where we stood on, or maybe it was, I don't know, Francisco. Anyway, on where we stand in relation to other cities, you know, I think it's maybe appropriate to get in line with other cities. However, I am concerned that if this is our justification, then to me, it's a department doing the job that it's intended to do. And I just mainly concerned also maybe about disproportional impacts on maybe people of restricted means, who live in older homes, smaller lots, et cetera, where some of these fees have been increased to such a degree that it might be cost prohibitive for people to access an appeal, where that amount has been increased by 4 times. And I actually thought that Kate was going to, I was going down a different train of thought when Kate was talking, because I would love to see that maybe we could break out or disaggregate different types of users, different types of utilizers, residential, multifamily, commercial, have some kind of tiered system, because I know that some of these fees seem to be could be cost prohibitive for somebody to access the services, and then to maybe access, I'm just thinking specifically about lot line or non-compliance or the single-family site plan, conditional use, appeal, some of those, I don't know. I'm concerned about an unintended consequence of making the entry or having a barrier to entry.
I think the idea of tiers is really interesting because obviously the time staff would spend on 5 points would be different than a single-family home or, so maybe Francisco or Lloyd, or I'm grateful that our building official is here. Maybe you could speak to that.
If you don't mind, I'll go first. I would say that for the things that I participate in, like lot line adjustments or subdivision reviews, typically the amount of time that we spend on those reviews far exceeds what the application fee is. It takes a significant amount of time, my time or my staff's time, to go through those and make sure they're correct. Before the hearing, after the hearing, they come back to us and, we do a double check before things go to the county to get recorded. To Don's credit, since he's been here at the city, he was shocked that where we were with our plan check fees from the building side of things, and we provided you with a summary of where we stood kind of with neighboring cities. I think as a staff, we do a really good job of being efficient in what we do, but that doesn't minimize really the time that it takes to get the water to the end of the row on many of these items.
Do you mind, I'm curious, and I know you may not have these figures right off the top of your head, but just maybe in the last year, how many just appeals have we had to land use decisions or conditional use permits, variances? I'm just wondering, like, how big of an impact the rate increase would be on overall, the overall budget?
Sure. I could answer those questions. And the first thing I want to hit is regarding the appeal fee. We do recognize a 4-time the amount, but at the end, it's all the same. If you look at the little tiny fine print under the appeal, currently it's a $500 fee plus 50%, half of the actual cost of the appeal authority. So I don't remember exactly how much our last appeal ended up being, but we're not requesting to change that from the fee schedule, where it's 50%. That's regardless of whether the city erred in that determination or the applicant erred. We're in that appeal 50% paying for that, and that comes out of my department budget. I just wanted to point that out, that the retainer fee, if you will, is increasing, but it's still being 50% of the actual appeal cost. We're not recommending to change that component because every appeal is different. The ALJ could spend 3 hours on one, or they could spend 10 hours on one. So we don't want to put a flat fee of $2,100. It's not a flat fee of $500. That's just the initial, let's get things started, appeal fee. It would still be 50-50. Regarding the smaller applications, we were, we put our estimate, Lloyd and I, based on our best case scenario. As Lloyd just simply articulated, we spent a lot more time in reviewing those applications. I recognize that we do have a flaw in our study. We didn't include our building officials' time on architectural review, for site plan, for ADUs, which he does spend a significant amount of time. We even take him out in the field to do a few inspections. So our estimate here was to the benefit of the best case scenario, no inspection needed. It's the perfect application, which doesn't exist yet. I haven't seen that perfect application. And if I could add another commentary, I ran these numbers, at least the site plan, by two local developers They said, we don't care, just tell us what it is. It's not hindering development. They would never say, oh, I'll go develop at Woods Cross instead since they're less, or another city. They just want to know how much it is. They want to write that check, and they want to get going, go before the planning commission, go to you, and get that decision made.
So-
Francisco, oh, sorry.
In regard to that specific comment, Francisco, I think what Councilmember Price Hewish is saying is a developer is just going to pass that cost along to the future homeowner. Whereas we have homeowners in town who are going to see a $6,500 permit fee and have sticker shock.
Sure. I could offer this comment.
Please.
We amended fees during my first year in 2020, and we didn't have this detailed analysis. And for example, an ADU permit was $50. $50. I did it quick and dirty, and I said, let's go to $125. It was a quick and dirty. Obviously, I went through the process, went through that budget process, and you approved it. I got 0 complaints on that. From nobody came in and complained about that, and that's one of my lowest, most inexpensive applications that we increased from 50 to 125. Just some food for thought on an application that didn't need a developer. That was the homeowner just simply paying for that.
So what is the fee?
We'll give you a minute in just a minute.
Sorry. What is the fee to talk to the city manager?
City manager is free.
Okay. So there is some carrying of staff and staff time that should be borne by the community in general.
Sure.
And part of the building division of the city, engineering, planning, et cetera, has always been borne by that.
Correct.
And I don't think that just because we can match other cities and just because we can raise fees without developers complaining, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to. That there may be a reasonable level that we subsidize that department without needing to recover all of those fees.
If I may add.
Please.
We don't disagree. I think if it wasn't clear from our analysis and our prior conversations, we don't think this comes close to recovering the full cost of our actual operations. These are best case scenario applications. Doesn't include any overhead costs. It doesn't include any of my time. Doesn't include any of the planning commission's time. We're not trying to recover every penny. There's still definitely a subsidy that applies. What we're trying to do is become much closer to covering the actual cost of the fee than we have been, and to justify to the public why the fees are what they should be. The only challenge with deviating from an analysis like this is there really isn't a justification for a number. The policy question really, just for the council, is do you want to try, I mean, we could do lots of different analyses to come up with a number, but really it is, the principle behind this is, do you want to try and recover a reasonable amount of the cost or not? And if you want to do something less than that, you can, but I wouldn't like the message to the public be that the reason that we're doing this is, 1, to keep up with the neighbors, and 2, to recover every penny, because that's not accurate.
Thank you. Dawn is our building official. Do you want to just have a minute?
I just wanted to point out to your comment of the, increase. The analysis that we did showing the other cities was just for informational purpose. The fee study that I mainly focused on was to take in mind the homeowner that wants to finish their basement, and that's why we gave a couple examples there. So on an average basement, there's an increase of $98. On the increase of a commercial project, it's a little bit more, but there's a lot more that goes into getting that reviewed and through the process. So I just wanted to point that out to council, that we did kind of take that viewpoint into consideration of the resident that just wants to do a remodel the kitchen or something. Those are the fees that increase the least.
Thank
maybe
you.
part
Any
of
other
my-
questions for Don?
No, maybe part of my heartburn is that I don't know which of these fees would apply to a homeowner that came in that wanted to put an addition on their house or finish their basement or whatever. I mean, we have the example, but, you know, looking at the list, and I apologize that I didn't catch this during the retreat, but we didn't really have a lot of time to delve into this, and we've had time since.
Do you want Lloyd or Francisco to try to get into that a little bit so we
No.
have a better understanding?
I don't think so.
So in offering some additional thoughts, I think as a council, we have discussed at different times that we run a very lean city staff. That has been something that has been a hallmark of Bountiful, that we have the exact amount of staff to get the job done and not one person more, not one spare body more. And that has served us well as a city in keeping costs low. But I think we would be being dishonest with ourselves and some of the conversations we've had together and with residents to not acknowledge that there are times where we are too thin on our staff, where we aren't able to handle projects as fast as we want, because we have been low on our fees. And a lot of these are, while some are definitely targeting residents, some of these are targeted at commercial enterprises where we are putting a burden on our staff so that someone can turn that into something that makes money. For instance, an ADU, while it is a residential property, that is so somebody can rent that unit out for, to make additional money. And if they're going to turn that into an Airbnb, for instance, they're turning that into a very high turnover, high utilization type of commercial enterprise. And, that is an area where we are being beat up collectively as cities at the state legislature. We are being beat up on turnaround time on multifamily projects and density developments, which are cumbersome, which we need to get right to make them fold into our city. Right? In order to accept what I believe is the vibrancy of density, we have to have our staff able to work on that in a timely way. We have to put all those touches on it. We have to have the community be able to engage, which is the free part, right? Which is not going to be built into that building permit. All of the outreach to the public and all the times the public wants to talk to Francisco or Lloyd or Clint or Gary about what they're seeing from that perspective. And those are just very real things I see play out in the bills that I'm trying to work on behalf of the city and on behalf of the League of Cities and Towns with the additional assignments I have there with the League of Cities and Towns. And so I am sympathetic to the family who wants to remodel their basement or remodel their kitchen. And to me, those increases don't seem nearly as large as those that we're seeing on the much more demanding projects that are for a commercial enterprise and a commercial nature, and that are even more important for us to get right in order to preserve the fabric of our city.
And I hope that there's no interpretation of my comments as I'm dissatisfied with staff or any review that's been done. That's not the issue. The issue is that for the last couple of days, I've just been mulling over this idea of how much of our city staff's time do we need to recover costs for, and how much are we used to providing, and should we still provide? So, any idea how much money came in from all these fees last year? Anyone?
I could quickly find out.
Just make a wild guess.
Boy. this is where I need Tyson. It changes so much from year to year based on the number of projects, but I would guess that the totality of these fees is probably in the range of about $120,000, $200,000.
And with these increases, what will it be?
It's impossible to say because
Gary, you can do it.
no, I could guess.
Your skills are
but
legendary.
I'm
They're
literally
project- they're
not
project
comfortable
specific, though,
putting a
right?
number out that the public will say, you
Oh,
told us this.
understood.
I'm not comfortable with that.
We don't know how many development applications might come before us.
Oh, I know. I just meant taking the same numbers from last year, applying these new fees. What percent increase would it be overall?
I mean, I question doing it that way because we don't have any more lands for a Renaissance. So, you know, the fees you might see attached to finishing out the building projects in the Renaissance are, there's not another chunk of raw ground or ground that's been raw since 1999 that we're going to see that. I mean, to me, this is a very variable fee because we may never hopefully see another pandemic where we all decide to remodel our basements again.
I think it's,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting that the chicken license fee is $5. It's gonna remain $5. The solar review is going from $908 to $250. I think there's a very reasonable approach here. I for one, am not a strong advocate of subsidies. I think costs should be borne as close to the source of where those costs occur in general, and I think that brings us a little closer to that methodology. I think our staff works tirelessly to turn things around quickly, but I think that this is a very fair way to have an applicant pay a reasonable fee. I don't see anything that is unreasonable on here myself.
So, if I could, what if we went from the very, very rough estimate of $120,000 to recovering $150,000? Is it worth that? I mean,
My
not having
personal-
real numbers,
yeah.
it's hard to make a decision, but
My
I'm just
personal
wondering.
philosophy aligns with Councilman Bell's, quite frankly, that
And you know, mine usually does too.
that cost that we are incurring, because in large part, not in total, but in large part, these are aimed at commercial uses, you know, some of these bigger ones on these multifamily properties. They're cumbersome, time-consuming projects for the staff, and that project ought to bear bulk of that cost. They won't bear 100% of it, they will bear the bulk of it, and to me, that aligns with a personal philosophy of mine that user fees allow us to have that direct connection and responsibility so that the public's able to see what the cost of whatever it is they want to do.
Thanks.
I would agree that commercial or developers, commercial uses or those by developers, those have, I think they have a different, you know, designation, and that I would agree that in those cases that the fee should be directly tied to the development, and that it's more appropriate for a high fee or a higher fee. Again, I just am concerned that, you know, when I hear that we're not getting pushback from developers or maybe commercial interests, I continue to just feel concerned about, you know, our individual residential homeowners, and that this could be a chilling effect on their ability to, you know, utilize their property in a positive and, you know, beneficial way for themselves, and especially the land use appeal. To me, that one specifically, that line item seems just highly exorbitant, especially as Francisco just explained that the 50/50 shared cost burden would remain the same. So I just, that just seems out of reach for an individual homeowner who may be, requesting an appeal, or I know Richard didn't say he wants to see this, but it would be really helpful if we could see this disaggregated out into, residential, single-family homeowners, and how what that impact would be.
So there are different fees for the different uses right now in the fee, so
Well, I know that for the, single-family residential, but for an appeal, that's not disaggregated. I don't know, conditional use permit going up over 2 times. It's hard for me to get comfortable with the numbers when I know that they're going to, how they're going to impact.
we could talk about the appeal a little bit, because the appeals, we don't have a lot of appeals traditionally per year. The ones that we do have tend to be extremely time-consuming and complicated, and so it's hard to come up with an average type of appeal, but maybe Clint can give an example of why we're estimating time in this manner based on the kinds of appeals we have. I think it's a very valid question, and maybe if you know what is involved with an appeal, it might make sense why the fee is the way it is.
Yeah, so as I'm thinking about the various appeals that we've had through the years since I've been here, one comes to mind. The amount of time is not necessarily atypical, but this is from about 5 or 6 years ago. These guys didn't have to endure this appeal. It was with Paul and Chad, but we had an appeal. Somebody applied for a variance, and because there was their lot exceeded, what is that, 30%? 30% of the slopes, and so they were granted a variance, and then the neighbor appealed the granting of a variance for that particular piece of property. As I recall, they submitted about 30 pages worth of legal arguments that we had to go through and review. I checked this, they called 17 witnesses in the appeal. We started it at 5 p.m. I think I got home at midnight. So that included staff time for me, the city engineer, 3 of the city planners, the planning secretary, and it was pretty detailed. It got pretty complicated. We had to talk about legal concepts involving the variance, the percentage of lots that are covered, the slope percentages. There ended up being an encroachment issue and a lot line issue, and I mean, honestly, I probably put 20 hours of work into that, just me alone. And if I put in 20, then engineering and planning put in at least 30, each employee. In the end, their appeal was unsuccessful, and thinking about that was quite a big cost for the citizens to bear. 7 hours worth of a hearing that we had to pay an administrative law judge for, not including the time that he had to take to sift through all the information, analyze it, and then write an opinion. And so that's just one example. I was also thinking back on this. I think almost every appeal we've had, they've been represented by an attorney, which is not a bad thing, but to me it shows 2 things. Number 1, cost is not the issue, and number 2, attorneys tend to make the process longer and more tedious, and
Boy, I'll say.
kind of like this comment, but And then just thinking of a more recent appeal, the last one we had, I think that just the hearing itself, how long were we in there? 4 hours, 5 hours?
4 or 5 hours.
4 or 5 hours. So that's me. Were you in there on that one, Lloyd? So that was me and Francisco
And Darlene.
so that's the staff time of that. 5 hours of 3 employees' staff time. That's just for a hearing itself, not for the preparation for the hearing, reading all the materials, preparing a response, doing the research. So I would say for every hour we spend in the hearing itself, we probably spend twice as many hours preparing. So in that case, we probably spent 8 hours. That's probably pretty accurate, what we did. We typically will have several staff meetings, 1 or 2 staff meetings going over the issues, making sure we're all on the same page, making sure we haven't missed something, considering their arguments, making sure that we haven't missed something, that we haven't made an error. So the appeals, while it is high, I will say there is a lot of time spent on those appeals. As I look at what I put down for the appeal, I think I noted, which page is the appeal on? Oh, right there. So I noted on mine that I spend about 5 hours. I think that in all my time here, there might be maybe one that I spent 4 hours. I think most of them are probably more like 10 to 15.
The other thing just to point out is that because these aren't common, and these, when we think of appeal, you might think of something where the person hasn't had an opportunity to be heard and to work through problems. By the time we get to an appeal, it has been months and months into the planning process. These aren't something that just, it's not the regular resident that comes in with a question or a concern about a land use application. This is something where a determination has been made after usually weeks or months of consideration, and then it's essentially a legal proceeding. So I don't know if that helps, but this isn't a fee for what most people would consider a disagreement over an ordinance. Those things we don't have fees for, and we work through with folks. So
I just wanted to add that in my 2.75 years of employment, we've had 2 appeals at Bountiful City.
I would also add this, just on the issue of the appeal, but I think it goes for a lot of these things. But certainly with the appeals, there is always an informal appeal before the appeal. Like, I can't tell you how many times Francisco or Lloyd or both of them or all 3 of us meet with them individually and go over the appeal, go over the issues, and try and work out a solution. Almost always there has been a significant amount of time that is spent before the appeal, hashing out the issues, understanding where they're coming from, trying to explain to them our position, explaining to them our interpretation of the code and the law. As I think about the one before the most current one, that one was that was a doozy. That one was dozens of hours by each of us. And that one ended up in the district court.
Mayor, may I make maybe just one last comment?
Sure.
In calculating fees, we're under some pretty strict guidelines by state law and by the state auditor's office to how we justify them. They can't be arbitrary. They have to be tied to the service that's provided, as Galen mentioned. And so we've used this methodology to come up with something that can be applied fairly and equally across the board. So I would just say this, if the council's interested in having a lower fee, the equitable way to do that would be, rather than picking a fee, any one of these individual fees, and saying that it ought to be lower, I think to really meet the standard that we have to meet of applying the same methodology to all of these fees, it would be to apply, say, a discount to the rates. Adopt all the rates at, say, 10% less than the methodology suggests, or 15% less, rather than picking a specific fee and coming up with what would be an arbitrary number it would be, I think, justifiable to say, okay, we see staff's recommendation, but we want to charge 50% of that or 25%. At least that way, we have a methodology that would stand the scrutiny of the state auditor's office for how we came up with our fees, and then a political or policy decision to purposely reduce the fee, if that helps.
What other questions does the council have?
I had a question. I'm trying to think of what it is real quick. It was about homeowners. What's the ratio of single-family home, existing single-family homes coming in for permits versus commercial or new home development? Do we know what that might be?
Maybe I could answer that. In an average year recently, if we did 30 homes in a year, that would be a lot. Our volume of single-family homes is really fairly low. Now, that doesn't include townhomes or multifamily, but your average single-family home here in Bountiful, 2 to 3 a month would be pretty common.
Maybe shed a little more light on that, and on the 30 homes. And you talk about an apartment, that's one permit. You might have 30 units, it might have 200 units, what we're seeing at Renaissance coming in now. Last year, we had just under 1,000 building permits. So 30 homes, maybe a dozen. This last year, maybe a dozen townhome buildings with 5 or 6 units in them for one permit. So 12 of those. But our total number of permits, change of service, basements, water heaters, all of those, it was just under 1,000. So.
So if I were to want to change my water heater, how would that fee look like or be assessed?
So those are a standard rate of $75.75. And so that covers that, and that doesn't really cover what goes into that fee. So that's our minimum price for a permit. The intake for the permit tech at the counter to process into the system, and the inspector time to go out and review that. It's and do the inspection, and sometimes there's multiple inspections. We usually don't. We haven't in the 10, 11 months that I've been here. We've not charged a re-inspection fee if you're not ready. So on the smaller permits, if they're not ready or if there's multiple corrections, we have to come back multiple times. We've not charged them for that. By state law, we're allowed to charge for re-inspection fees if it's absorbent. We just haven't felt that we, at this time, needed to do that. So, but all of those permits are in that $1,000 or 1,000.
Where's that fee identified here?
I found your number, Lloyd. I pulled it up from my moderate income housing report, single-family dwellings, it was 34. You're right on it, Lloyd.
So that fee, sorry, Jesse, that fee is not changing, so it's not in the analysis.
Any other questions for Don? Thank you.
So 34 new, it was 34 existing homes
No, it was
or
34.
new homes?
It was 34 single-family dwellings, which, per the reporting that engineering gets, it includes duplexes. So in 2021, we provided a certificate of occupancy to 34 single-family dwellings and duplexes. That was as of the date of this report, which was October, November 2021.
It's a great discussion. Any other questions or thoughts?
Sounds like you're ready for a motion. Yes. I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-02.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. We will now move to consider approval of the purchase of a Chevrolet crew cab truck from Young Automotive Group, Mr. Craig Christensen.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing me to come here today to speak of this Chevy purchase. As you all kind of know, it's kind of crazy out there with manufacturing and purchasing. And because of that, we went out for bid for the purchase of this truck to replace one of the trucks that we have in our 10-year capital plan. And during that bidding process, we were told by the manufacturing dealerships that they were not taking government fleet orders at this time, and they were not going to for the foreseeable future. It was actually during the delivery of a truck that we got approval for last February that got delivered a couple weeks ago that we asked the salesperson at the Young Automotive Group if they had anything on lot that would be comparable. And they did have one truck on lot that would work for our application. It's this Chevy 2500 pickup. The other way around it is if you'd have to just purchase off of lot at regular pricing. This was a budgeted item in the 10-year capital plan and have reviewed this with city manager and public works director. And it is staff recommendation that you guys would consider approval of the purchase of this Chevrolet 2500 heavy-duty crew cab pickup from Young Automotive Group for $36,128. If
Is
you have
it
any
blue?
questions.
You found a blue one?
It's white.
Any other questions?
Well, how does it going to fit into the water department if it's not blue?
Well, we have blue paint that we
House?
use for, you know, marking up blue stakes, so we could do that, I guess. So.
Move to approve.
In a pandemic, beggars can't be choosers. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now consider the final approval of the Creekside View subdivision located at 1350 South Davis Boulevard. Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. You may remember back in September of last year, the preliminary approval of this subdivision. And I'd just like to acknowledge Dan and Amber Crane in the audience tonight, who are the developers of this project. Final approval was reviewed by the Planning Commission last week, and they forward a recommendation for approval, for final approval of the subdivision. Just by way of an update, and Miranda, could I get you to link up to my computer? As we've gone through the review and design process, there have been relatively few changes, but there are some things I would like to highlight. First of all, I want to start here with the county's ownership. And just to give you an idea of exactly the shape of this property and where it is. I really like this photo because it shows the relief that goes down into the creek bottom. And it also shows the proximity of the Crane's property to the very end of Creekside Park. They actually meet at a point here, so there is some connectivity there. This parcel that I've highlighted is also owned by the city, so it gives us some opportunities to have some connectivity with our trail system, which we'll talk about in a minute. I want to switch gears to Google Earth because I can review some of the utility considerations that I think are very important. I'm going to start with stormwater. The city currently has a 24-inch concrete storm drain pipe which runs on the west side of the Cranes property. This will be the facility that receives the runoff from this development. This will be detained and retained according to our current stormwater ordinance and requirements from the state and the EPA. Plenty of capacity in that pipe. Very fortunate to have a receiving facility like that so close. The Planning Commission expressed some concerns about runoff from Davis Boulevard, making it down into the cul-de-sac, potential flooding issues for residents, knowing that this is a downhill cul-de-sac. I believe our discussion earlier with the council at the preliminary approval was that we review that closely, and we feel that as staff, we've made accommodations to provide adequate drainage in the cul-de-sac, and that we'll closely review building plans as homes are built in here to provide adequate slopes and protections from the accidental occurrence that, maybe Mother Nature brings us a little more water than what we expect.
How many hours will that take you? I'm kidding.
I'm going to turn this off and move to our culinary water system. I think this is probably one of the most important parts of this development and the approval of this. You'll notice that we have our Mill Creek Reservoir here. That's a 3 million gallon reservoir. We also have a booster station below it. This facility is really the linchpin in our culinary system. All of our wells that are down here in the lower part of town basically pump to Mill Creek, and then we pump from Mill Creek up the hill. Without this facility, we have a hard time moving water anywhere. You'll see the green line on the west side of the property. It extends all the way down past the reservoirs before it finally ties back in here on at Davis Boulevard and 1800 South. One of the opportunities that we get through this development is the chance to provide a redundant connection from the discharge side of the Mill Creek Reservoir to the line in Davis Boulevard, just immediately to the east. That's important because redundancy in a water system is very important. If you have a line break, which Greg can attest to, sometimes you really have to interrupt service to take care of those things, and this would give us the opportunity to have a backup plan, for lack of a better word. This will require a crossing of the Davis Aqueduct, and so we're going to have to work with the Cranes to get the appropriate permits, but we think it's possible, and we're sure that it's a very good thing. The next utility I'd like to talk about is the sewer. Currently, the sewer ends over here on 6th East, and really this is the only practical way to provide sewer to the development. With the approval of the subdivision as recommended, the sewer district requires an easement over the extension of this line. So the line would be extended up the asphalt driveway through the gravel part and enter the Cranes development in here and then transition over into the cul-de-sac. The city council would need to authorize granting an easement to the sewer district for this facility. That would protect their interests in this. I think this is a really good option for us. It provides an opportunity for our needs maybe on this Mill Creek Reservoir site in the future. And really, again, is the only practical way to sewer the Cranes development. The other item I'd like to talk about for a minute is the trail. Trails are a really popular topic right now, and we've discussed the city's desire to have a trail through this property. As I've met and worked with Dan and Amber, we've talked about several options, and we've met on site, we've tromped through the trees, we've followed the deer, and it's really an amazing property. There's really some neat things down there. This middle line that's red was kind of an initial, just look at the plans and kind of take a stab at where I thought a trail ought to go. We actually walked that, and while it would work out pretty good, meeting with Dan and understanding his desires for providing a trail through the property, we feel like this upper red line represents probably the best opportunity to provide a trail next to the creek. It would exit the Cranes property about right here, and then these switchbacks would take place on city property on the face of the debris basin, which it's kind of a tough climb out of there no matter how you go. But we do have a little flexibility to make it steeper or less steep as we go through that. The green line kind of represents a backup plan that Dan and I discussed where an easement could be granted for a connection from the end of the Creekside Park across this corner of the Cranes property, cross the property line onto city property, and then head for the catwalk, which is on the north side of the reservoir. I think it's fair to say in our discussions between Dan and I that he acknowledges the city's desire to have a trail, and he's expressed his desire to provide a facility that the community can enjoy. There's a couple ways that could be done. He could dedicate an easement, or he could dedicate the property to the city as a separate parcel. In my mind, the wise course of action would be to dedicate it as an easement. The Davis County Public Works is already requiring dedication of a 25-foot wide easement along the south side of the creek so that they can perform stream maintenance if the need comes. Now, if they get in there and have to work along the creek, they're going to have to create a space for their equipment, and that will leave a really adequate facility for a trail. But in the meantime, talking with Brock, I think our concept for a trail at this time is really just a footpath, a couple of feet wide, not really meant for anything more than foot traffic. I believe that's about all of the concerns that I've had as I've reviewed this. All the other standards for the development for lot size, lot width, they're met and exceeded. I really think this is going to be a great little development here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No, but I'll be happy to make a motion that we grant final approval to the Creekside Views subdivision as has been presented with the conditions that are listed.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, we will now consider approval of the bid from Advanced Paving for the reconstruction of Second South. Mr. Lloyd Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. This is probably the first of the items that you'll see out of the engineering department. We We typically have a lot of these this time of year. The street department includes street reconstruction projects in their budget, and for the upcoming budget year, well, I guess the current budget year, this project from Second South, from First East to Fourth East is included in their budget. We wanted to strike early in the construction season, and I think that we did very well at that. We had 8 bidders respond to the project, and you can see a pretty good cluster of bids between Advanced Paving, Black Forest, and Staker Parsons. We felt like we did a really good job, number one, of estimating, and number two, timing. Advanced Paving is someone that we've worked with before on other projects. They're excited to come back to Bountiful and have the opportunity to work with us again. They've done a really good job for us. Unfortunately, on a couple of previous projects, maybe we had some PR challenges with the residents. The engineering staff recognizes that, and we've committed to a much higher effort in communicating with the residents and getting the word out. But really, Advanced Paving is fully qualified and is really great to work with. We're thrilled that they're the low bidder, and we would recommend the council award this contract to them.
Mayor, can I comment?
Please.
Lloyd, I was really comforted by the last line of that paragraph under the bids. This project is first in line on Advanced Paving's summer schedule. Second North was not first in line, and I know that that was not necessarily anyone's fault, but
It was brutal.
it's nice to be first in line.
It is.
And the engineer should be congratulated for his engineer's estimate as well. That's fine work.
You get lucky once in a while.
Lloyd, is
Bet that's it.
there any chance that the water pipe project will hang us up? I mean, I've heard that the water pipe is extremely hard to find and come by. Will that delay us from being first in line? Because I also was excited to see we were first in line.
Yeah.
There's always that possibility. Bountiful Irrigation has started their replacement now so that they'll have their work done in time for this to begin. We'll be having a bid opening on the waterline projects next week. And so in 2 weeks, we hope to bring a contract to you for a waterline contractor, and this really would be the very first place for them to start.
What, I'm assuming, you know, if we weren't done with the water projects and we slipped to their number 2 project because we weren't ready, that still puts us in a good position, even maybe number 3. But how much wiggle room do we have to stay in their first position on timing?
I don't know that I can answer that. They've been very accommodating in the past. I think they would continue to do that. We have a great working relationship with them. I do know some guys who work for the city who, you know, may be called into action if necessary, depending on what happens with waterline contracts. We've kept them busy over the last year. They're a pretty good waterline contractor too. But they have a lot to do. We'd sure like to have a contractor, an outside contractor come and do this.
You know, the streets that have been done, you know, they end up being really great projects. And I think the homeowners, ultimately, when they get through that pain, are very happy with their water service and their sewer service and their improved driveway aprons. But it's a hard, I would say few months, but we've seen the one that was not a few months. It's hard on them, so. to
The
extent that we
dust
can
and
keep it fast.
construction comments turn to speeding comments. So, yeah, that's a sign of a good project.
Lloyd, I have a question with, as far as the requirement that Advanced Paving participate or conduct that communication with the surrounding neighborhood. How far out does that extend in the surrounding neighborhood? And what does that look like? How far in advance will there be continuing communications with, with neighbors? What are our requirements there for advanced paving?
They're contractually required to do the public coordination with that. We would expect from them a weekly update to be handed out. It's a little hard to gauge how far out to go with that. I think typically we would start with, obviously, the residents that front along the street, and for the side streets that intersect that, we would go to the next block, north or south. Catch the people who really have the reason to head through the project.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the bid from Advanced Paving for the reconstruction of 200 South in the amount of $325,746.
Second.
Could I make an ask on that? Could you amend your motion to include the unit prices in the bid instead of the total? Because the contract is based on unit prices.
I'll amend my motion to include the bid sheet on page 81 with the unit prices and cost outlined there.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now consider approval of a beer license for El Dorado. Mr. Astorga.
Thank you. El Dorado at 435 South 500 West request a Class D, which Class D alcohol liquor license entitles the licensee to sell beer only on the licensed premises, on draft, or in original containers for the consumption on the premises in accordance with the Liquor Control Act and local code. I should have had tacos today on Taco Tuesday. They request this Class D beer license. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do we have someone, I'm just curious, here representing El Dorado? Thank you. Any questions?
Mayor, seeing that the correct signatures and approvals are on the form, I'd make a motion that we approve the license.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, and you are absolutely correct. We're lucky to have El Dorado and Bountiful, really good Mexican food. So.
Yeah, I should have eaten there instead of eating at Wendy's today.
We love all the restaurants.
Sometimes you need cold food. Sorry.
We will move to consider the approval of Ordinance 2022-01, amending the land use code text. Mr. Astorga.
Thank you. We had a work session discussion on this on January 11th, 2022, where council expressed your preference to keep a member of the city council on the planning commission. You understood that or explained that you see the benefits of that it makes better communication. So as directed by you, we went ahead and made changes. The only significant impact is that it removes the mayor's optional ability to make the appointment, and it makes it a requirement. It simply reads, the mayor shall appoint one person, shall appoint one of the five of the five other members of the city council as a full member of the planning commission. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
Be happy to make a motion to adopt our land use ordinance, land use code ordinance 2022-01.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.